Section 7.
P-TECH Course 4 Student Outline, Section 7, Relevant Data to Identify Personal Property Accounts. Learning Objectives. Identify the 4 primary classifications of personal property and know how the Texas Property Tax Code requires they be appraised. List the data that is necessary to identify personal property. Know the data required to identify the specific characteristics used to appraise personal property. Define the business type classifications and know their importance in the appraisal process, and explain the concepts behind the level of trade. Introduction. This section discusses the data necessary to properly identify and quantify personal property items for appraisal and tax collection. Some of this data aids in the proper valuation of the property, while other data is important to situs determination and justification of values. The proper listing of personal property is critical to ensure that the value of ownership of the property can be accurately determined. Correct identification and classification saves considerable time in subsequent years. B. Classification of personal property. What must be classified? A. Tax Code Section 11.01 states that all real and tangible property that this state has jurisdiction to tax is taxable unless exempt by law. This state has jurisdiction to tax real property if located in this state, and jurisdiction to tax tangible personal property if the property is located in the state for longer than a temporary period. Temporarily located outside the state, an owner resides in this state, or used continually, whether regularly or irregularly, in the state. Tangible personal property that is operated outside this state during the year preceding the tax year and on January 1 of the tax year is not taxable in this state. Number 2, level of trade. A. Trade level is a recognized concept. It is often used when valuing inventories. It recognizes that incremental costs such as freight, overhead, and handling are added to a product as it moves through the different levels. Property reaches its maximum value as it reaches the retail level of trade. B. Problems associated with the trade level concept include, number 1, arriving at the appropriate value at the various levels of trade when the manufacturer does not reflect, record, or recognize the various levels on their accounting records. Number 2, arriving at the appropriate value of leased equipment when the manufacturer may also be the distributor, consumer, and lessor. C, the positive aspect of the trade level approach is that the property is being valued equitably, uniformly, and consistently with like properties, regardless of ownership and or cost as reflected on the accounting methods. D, levels of trade to be considered. Number 1, primary producer is the level in the appraisal process when the property is in the hands of the provider of raw materials that will eventually be used in the manufacturing process. Number 2, manufacturer's level is the level in the appraisal process only when the property is in the hands of the manufacturer in the local manufacturer's plant.
And in the local manufacturer's plant.
Okay, so the manufacturer's level is the level in the appraisal process only when the property is in the hands of the manufacturer and in the local manufacturer's plant.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
Number 3, wholesale level is the level in the appraisal process when property moves from the manufacturer's level to the wholesale level. As property moves through the channels of trade, it increases in value by virtue of the cost of freight, overhead, and intercompany profit. These value factors added to the property will result in equity regardless of ownership. Thus, the increments of value must be recognized at that level. Number 4, distributor level. Distributor level is in some cases synonymous with the wholesale level. However, a distributor may be a go-between for a wholesaler. You're gross. However, A distributor may be a go-between for a wholesaler in dealing directly with retailers. Number 5. Retail level is relevant in the appraisal of many properties. Property normally attains maximum value at this point, includes freight, overhead, and handling. How do you read this? As goods move up, the level of trade costs increase. As goods move up, the levels of trade costs increase, and so does value.
Well, the primary producer is the lowest level of trade. And so those dollar signs are meaning they're
Low value.
low value to higher value. And they said earlier, at the retail level, when it's in the store, it's at its highest value.
Do I need to read that any further?
No.
Okay. Examples of the kind of inventory found at each level include.
Okay, so you're going to say raw materials, primary producer.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Okay, I didn't know.
So your item is raw materials, level of trade, primary producer. Item raw materials, level of trade, manufacturer. Item goods in process, level of trade, manufacturer. Item finished goods, level of trade, manufacturer. Item stock in trade, level of trade, wholesaler or distributor. Item goods in storage, level of trade, wholesaler or distributor. Item stock in trade, level of trade, retailer. Item goods in storage, level of trade, retailer. C. Property characteristics. Number 1, tangible personal property can be broken into 2 general areas. The inventory items are merchandise items, inventory held for the purpose of sale. The fixed assets are use goods,
Use items.
Goods that have reached the use for which they were originally intended. Number 2, characteristics of merchandise items. A, personal property bought or sold to make a profit. B, not being used for their intended or ultimate purpose. And C, constitutes inventory. 3, characteristics of use items. A, no longer merchandise. B, may be further bought or sold, but will not be through recognized levels of trade. Number 4, business use. A, commercial and industrial use. B, machinery, equipment, tools, supplies, spare parts, furniture and fixtures, vehicles, special purpose vehicles, aircraft, etc. Number 5, farm and ranch use, separate classification. A, machinery, equipment, supplies, vehicles, etc. B, implements of husbandry are exempt under state law. 6, personal use. A, autos, trucks, recreational vehicles, antique vehicles, aircraft, watercraft, etc. B, a wide range of personal use items are exempt. C, personal autos are exempt unless made taxable on a local option basis. D, more thoughts on classification and identification. Number 1, Tax Code Section 11.01 requires A, list of taxable personal property by name of owner. B, that an exemption list be maintained. Number 2, the owner, not user, is responsible for the personal property tax. A, property is often in the hands of user rather than owner. 3, leased department. A separately owned section of a retail store that subleases space within a retail store. Number 1, common example is a specialized jewelry section within a department store. Number 2, need to determine if any leased space exists in the store. Number 3, a large store is not likely to indicate leased space unless asked. Number 4, treat the inventories of the subleased area as a small store. Number 5, owner of the items in the leased space pays the property tax. Number 4, consigned goods. A, listed under the name of the owner of the goods rather than the business that sells them. Number 1, example, appliance manufacturers, art galleries, designer clothes, second-hand furniture and clothes, and antique malls. Number 2, the owner of the goods pays the property tax. Number 5, Floor plan agreement. Number 1. The retailer offers the property for sale and the financial institution has a security interest. If the property does not sell, the financial institution may take possession of the property. Financial institutions rarely hold the title. The property is listed in the name of the retailer. The key is under the agreement who has ownership. Financial institutions view the dealer as the owner. They generally have a security interest. And an example is automobile and appliance dealerships are good examples of this. Number 6, bailments. A bailment is the rightful temporary possession of goods by someone other than the true owner. Number 1, one who entrusts, a bailor. Number 2, one holding the property is the bailee. Number 3, designated purpose and time. Number 4, example, truck customizers hold a chassis under a bailment from the manufacturer while converting. E, typical data for property identification. In order to properly identify the specific property and correctly categorize it, the following are examples of the kinds of information that will be required. A, account name. B, business name. C, owner name. D, business phone number. E, business fax number. F, business email address. G, mailing address. H, location address. I, business type of Standard Industrial Classification or SIC issued by the Office of Finance and Budget or other classification system. J, comptroller's taxpayer number. K, jurisdiction codes. L, map number. M, description. N, make, model, or other permanent number. F, property characteristics. The following items are examples of the general areas where descriptive data is required to aid in the proper valuation of personal property. A, merchandise items. Number 1, inventory or finished goods. Number 2, work in process. Number 3, raw materials. Number 4, supplies. B, use items. Number 1, furniture and fixtures. Number 2, machinery and equipment. Number 3, leasehold improvements. Number 4, computers and electronic equipment. Number 5, vehicles. C, general appraisal data. Number 1, area measurements, square, cubic, linear feet, etc. Number 2, quality factors. Number 3, density factors. Number 4, average age. Number 5, rendered cost, depreciation, opinion of value. D, quantity, if more than one. E, physical condition. Number 1, fair. Number 2, average. Number 3, good. F, date of manufacture or serial number. G, date delivered into district. Number 1, location of property with jurisdictional codes. H, cost. 1, new. 2, used. 3, in crate or installed. Part of cost is the duty cycle, how many times per year it produces product.
No, it's not.
It's not?
It's not part of cost.
Oh, it sure
cost
isn't.
Is H.
Okay, I'm sorry, I read that completely wrong. So scratch that from the record. So I, duty cycle, how many times per year it produces a product. J, use statement, explanation of how the property is used. And K, estimate of remaining economic life. G, data for mass appraisal application. Number 1, in order to apply data in a mass appraisal model, there must be some method that groups similar businesses together and standardizes. That doesn't make sense. In order to apply data in a mass appraisal model, there must be some method that groups similar businesses together and standardizes the measures used in the model calculations. This is discussed in greater detail in Section 12, but for now, here are the basic data groupings needed. A, type of business. B, quality and condition of the personal property. C, density of the personal property. D, size of the premise in which the personal property is located.
Size of the premises.
What did I say?
Size of the premise.
Size of the premises in which the personal property is located. H. Potential problem areas. Number 1. Property in warehouses and self-storage units. A. May require owner or manager of the storage facility to report the names and addresses of the person or persons who lease or use the facility. 1. Challenge here is the turnover in use, especially self-storage. Number 2. Tax code requires the commercial warehouseman to provide tenant lists at the request of the chief appraiser. Number 3. If lists are obtained, rendition forms should be sent to property owners. Number 2. Property listed under DBA category. A. It may be difficult to track the property under a DBA because of a lack of ownership determination. Cross-checking and updating are critical to determining ownership within DBAs. Number 3. Complexity of market value estimation by classification. A. Merchandise owned by a manufacturer, wholesaler, or retailer has a different market value at each level. 1. There are use items for which there may be no market. Number 2. Similarly, there may be no market for certain merchandise items. Number 4. Determination of real versus personal property. A. Classification of certain machinery, fixtures, or equipment as real or personal property can be difficult. Number 1. Has the fixture become part of the real estate? Number 2. Tools and spare parts are clearly personal property. In summary, prior to any appraisal of personal property, it is critical to collect and record good descriptive data about location, physical arrangement, quantity, quality, physical condition, and trade levels. Time and care spent in this effort will pay dividends when it comes to proper valuation and justification for values. Because personal property is movable and is regularly replaced, this is an ongoing process. End section. Ding, ding.